Tonight, the province's trips to recruit doctors have little payoff. That story and
people, I think, should rethink their St. Patrick's Day celebrations in light of this.
As we had to lock things down back in mid-March, early March, we may find ourselves in that situation again.
We are suspending all in-school class instruction.
We've seen household contacts that have been affected.
4 years after health officials detected the first COVID-19 case in the province, we're looking at the lasting effects of the pandemic.
Last night, Gander, tonight, Corner Brook. The leader of the Conservative Party is making his rounds to hotels in western and central parts of the province. We'll hear what Pierre Poilievre has to say.
It's the biggest weekend for women's high school basketball here in Newfoundland and Labrador, the provincial championships.
It feels great. It feels great to be a part of this atmosphere, to help coach the young kids. It's such a great experience and some of my best memories. I love to contribute and be a part of it.
I'm Jeremy Eaton, and I'll tell you more about that coming up.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. It appears costly recruitment trips to Ireland, the United Kingdom, and Saskatchewan have not brought in more doctors. According to an accessed information request obtained by the PCs, just a single doctor was recruited, and that doctor is from Ireland. The province has spent tens of thousands of dollars on these trips. Still, the health minister is defending them, saying they've led to some international medical graduates choosing to do their residency here.
There are other individuals that we've looked at as well, including registered nurses from Ireland, Mr. Speaker. The Come Home Incentive is one of the most successful incentive programs this province has ever put in place to recruit healthcare professionals to this province.
Now, the PCs say part of the problem is the system, that it's too difficult for doctors to get licenses in this province.
It became more difficult for those doctors from other countries to be able to get their applications approved to work in Newfoundland and Labrador. And we've been told of instances where right now there are doctors who are working in Nova Scotia, right next door, who are actually turned down from working in Newfoundland and Labrador. How does that happen?
Well, meantime, the province's chief medical officer is urging people to get vaccinated for measles. That advice from Dr. Janice Fitzgerald comes amid warnings from Canadian health officials about the spread of the virus. Measles is one of the most contagious diseases, and there are confirmed cases in a number of provinces, including BC, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Quebec. Some of those are travel-related. The health department says there are no cases in Newfoundland and Labrador, but the virus can spread quickly through unvaccinated populations. Vaccination rates in this province are high, but the health department says if you are planning to travel, there are steps you can take. Now, people traveling outside of Canada, especially to places where there's an outbreak, should make sure they're vaccinated against the disease. Infants between 6 and 12 months should get 1 dose of the vaccine before traveling. They'll still need another dose at 12 and 18 months. Anyone born before 1970 should make sure they've had 1 dose of the measles vaccine before traveling. And anyone born in or after 1970 should make sure they've had 2 doses. Well, it's been 4 years since the first presumptive case of COVID-19 was detected in this province. And while many lockdown-era measures have since faded, the virus has made a lasting impression. Here and Now's Heather Gillis has that story.
Signs of the pandemic's physical distancing requirements have faded. Now, subtle reminders of former COVID-19 restrictions. It's been 4 years since the province's first presumptive positive case, back when briefings with Chief Medical Officer Janice Fitzgerald were a daily event.
We knew our province would eventually get cases, and there are plans in place to respond.
It's a time Laurie and Cheryl McLean remember all too well. Laurie was part of the calls cluster with about 170 cases. At the time, it was one of the biggest outbreaks in Canada.
I thought I was dying then, right? Because I mean, I literally couldn't breathe. So, because I remember thinking, okay, so this is what it's like not to be able to breathe, right?
Laurie ended up in the ICU on a ventilator, and as he lay in that hospital bed, the world around him shut down.
Effective immediately, we are suspending all in-school class instruction throughout the province.
Daycare closures followed, along with businesses. Drive-in testing centers cropped up. Meanwhile, Laurie was in and out of consciousness, experiencing crazy fever dreams.
Right? There was humans just being lined up, and the aliens were looking at us, and and they came to me and they shook their heads and they threw me out. So the aliens rejected me, and I knew then that as I look back, and I think now that's my body winning the battle. Right? Yeah. That's what I think is going on there, because there's other dreams before that were more morbid about heading for the ultimate rest and whatever. Right?
Since being released from the hospital in spring 2020, Laurie McLean has made a full recovery from COVID-19. But so many other people in this province haven't been that lucky. About 400 people in Newfoundland and Labrador have died from COVID-19 since the pandemic began.
It's still like a little unbelievable that it came to that.
He and his wife closely followed all public health restrictions ever since. Laurie's been infected a second time, but not Cheryl at all. And from restrictions, from border closures to double bubbles to mask and vaccine requirements, these days, they say life is pretty well back to normal.
I don't even think of it, to tell you the truth. Like I have a mask in my pocket all the time, but I rarely use it, to tell you the truth.
We don't dwell on it at all, and I don't think about it from day to day.
While the global public health emergency and most public health restrictions are over, the pandemic technically isn't, with 775 million people infected worldwide in the last 4 years. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the mayor of St. John's says housing in the city will need to change to address the current crisis. More than $10 million in federal funding was announced today to change policy and help build more homes in the capital city. The Housing Accelerator Fund is expected to help build more than 280 homes over the next 3 years. MP Seamus O'Regan says the changes will hopefully lead to denser developments and more multi-unit homes.
Anybody who complains about what are you doing throwing money at a process are the same people who are complaining about red tape and lack of certainty. So we're getting rid of red tape. We're putting in more certainty. We're getting more houses built.
I think it's pretty common that when there is a housing application or a development application in St. John's, they tend to get controversial. But I think they have to be open to that. Housing is going to be different in the future than it has been in the past.
Well, Ottawa will not delay the carbon tax increase next month. As we've been reporting, the Premier wants the April 1st date to be moved until inflation stabilizes. He says people in the province are already struggling with the cost of living, but a delay would also mean delaying a carbon rebate. And a spokesperson for Chrystia Freeland's office says any Premier who wants to do that is targeting low-income Canadians. Now, in a statement, the office says the average low-income family in this province will get a rebate of upwards of $400 more than they pay in the tax, and that canceling the carbon rebate would be a, quote, net negative. Ottawa says that will be true for 8 out of 10 Canadians, with lower-income families benefiting the most. Well, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre is on the west coast of the island tonight. He's hosting a meet and greet event in the Quality Inn in Corner Brook. Here and Now's Colleen Connors is there.
That's right, Carolyn. Pierre Poilievre will meet with his supporters right here later this evening. It's his second stop, his second hotel in just 2 nights in Newfoundland and Labrador. He's billing tonight as a chance to speak about outdoor sports in Western Newfoundland. But I'm sure this room will be filled with Conservative supporters, like Tony Wakeham, who's the leader of the opposition in this province, and of course has his district on the west coast. He shared a social media post saying he stands with Pierre Poilievre in calling on Trudeau to do away with the carbon tax.
I'm not interested in cozy relationships. I'm interested in respectful relationships. And the fact of the matter, the only federal leader that has committed to axing the carbon tax is the Conservative leader.
A big topic that Poilievre focused on in Gander last night, with over 100 supporters turning up. Our Here and Now's Troy Turner was there to capture it all. Have a look.
It was an election-style entrance to a room full of support, and the talking points were familiar. Pierre Poilievre again took aim at the Liberals' proposed carbon tax hike, scheduled for April 1st.
We're going to be putting forward a motion in the House of Commons on which all members of Parliament will have a chance to vote next week to cancel this tax increase. So I need you to call your local member of Parliament and tell them that they have to vote with common sense Conservatives to fight this hike.
Through the 40-minute talk, Poilievre talked about crime, making government employees and politicians more accountable, and the country's housing crisis.
We need to build the homes. We've got the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. And we spend the most of our economy and more of our GDP on home building. This used to be a big city problem, but the prices have now radiated out to the countryside as people are forced to move further and further away from the core in order to find a place they can afford.
Many people here liked what they heard.
I think we're paying to the nose now. I mean, every time you go to the gas pumps, I mean, you know, you can barely afford to put, you know, where you one time it cost you 50, now it costs you 150 to fill up the tank. And there's a limit to your limitations. I think it's time to stop.
We need to change. Things got to be better than what it is. Cut some taxes. Give us old age pensioners something more than old age pension. We're Newfoundlanders, we're the common folk. We want to be, we know each other, we want to help everybody. And Pierre Poilievre is the epitome of the common sense and the everyday person.
Collins said life in her town has become unaffordable and thinks stopping the carbon tax hike will help.
I know there's people now that have to decide whether or not they're going to buy a can of milk or they're going to put it on their light bill. So when we're in that kind of dire strait, there's something that's majorly wrong.
Poilievre is scheduled to make stops in the Maritimes following his visit to the west coast of the island tonight.
So that was the scene in Gander last night, and later tonight in Corner Brook, another hotel and another speech to a room full of supporters. For Here and Now, I'm Colleen Connors in Corner Brook.
Well, there was supposed to be a sitting of the House of Assembly today, but government decided to adjourn until next Wednesday's budget. The government House leader says they passed all the bills they needed to ahead of schedule, but both the PCs and NDP say government is trying to avoid accountability.
Pure and simple, it's total disrespect for the House. Those 2 days, you get 30 minutes question period each day. You get petitions, 4 to 5 petitions. But it's just the fact that they don't respect the House enough to let us come in and debate the issues that's important to people in our province. When I got people in my district waiting for MRIs, we got people waiting for surgeries, we got people, heart patients, and we can't come in and speak and stand in our place and do petitions and represent them, I think is outrageous.
We have, I think, one of the shortest parliamentary calendars across the country. So, in other words, they're telling me we really don't have that much to discuss, or we're not interested in discussing it.
Well, the weather today hasn't been too bad out there in some cases. We're still in that onshore flow that is leading to some drizzle, some freezing drizzle in some cases, and even some flurries. But we do have an area of low pressure just to the north here that is going to bring some snow to parts of Labrador as we head through the next couple of days. But we are sitting in some cooler air in the upper levels, which is why some of us are seeing those flurries. And that will generally continue tonight. Live look outside at the moment, a beautiful evening as the sun sets in about an hour from now. But we've got our temperature around -1. Northeast winds anywhere from 30 to about 40 kilometers per hour. Visibility much better than it was yesterday. So speaking of sunsets, we are gaining about 10 minutes a week. By the time we get into April 4th, in 3 weeks, we will be at a 7:30 sunset, which will be nice. But as we head through the next couple of days, the weather, not too bad. We'll talk all about it when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Memorial University's Lecturers Union has ratified a tentative agreement. Lumen and MUN put together a last-minute deal Sunday night, narrowly avoiding a strike deadline of midnight. Now the union has voted in favor of that deal. The union's main sticking point was wages, but it has not released any details about the agreement. It still has to be ratified by MUN's Board of Regents. Well, a fire at the Central Dairies facility in Mount Pearl is interrupting the province's milk supply. Production is paused in Dunavans due to water and smoke damage from Monday night's fire. The Quebec-based company that owns Central Dairies says shoppers will soon see the difference at the grocery store. It says milk products will be sparse, but it plans to ship in other Farmers brand products to help supplement the loss. Well, one of the largest literary awards in Atlantic Canada has a new winner. 3 people were shortlisted for the 2023 Winterset Award, including a married couple, longtime novelist Michael Crummey, and first-time author Holly Hogan. CBC's Weekend AM host Heather Barrett went to today's ceremony to see who took home the $12,500 top prize.
And the 2023 BMO Winterset recipient is Holly Hogan.
Unfortunately, Holly is unable to be with us today. In a poetic twist, Holly is hard at work at sea off the coast of Shelburne, Nova Scotia. But I invite Holly's husband, Michael Crummey, to come forward and to receive the award on her behalf.
Well, I've never been so happy to lose something in my life. The book is a mix of memoir and kind of popular science, and it's largely about Holly's life at and near the sea. And she's a seabird biologist. She's become increasingly aware of how dangerous marine plastics have become for marine life. It's not just the ocean that's in trouble, it's our own bodies, that there's microplastics and nanoplastics entering our bodies all the time. So it's really a call to arms against plastic.
This is probably likely one of the only times that this sort of thing would happen with a literary award in Canada, that it's a married couple that are at the top of the list. What is that like?
I mean, it was just a really fantastic thing to have this happen for both of us. I mean, the chances are slim to none. And it was just a real thrill to be able to share that with her. And I'm thrilled that she won it, because I think her book is not only one of the most beautiful and most interesting books published in Canada last year, but it's also, I think, one of, if not the most important books published.
Oh, congratulations. Well, the third person on the short list was our very own William Ping, nominated for his debut novel, Hollow Bamboo. Both runners-up will receive $3,000 each.
It feels great, I must say, to be recognized amongst talented writers like Michael and Holly, and sort of the legacy of the Winterset Award, all the talented writers who've been acknowledged. So it really means a lot to find a place on that list.
Well, now to some sports news. The Newfoundland Rogues are back on home court and had a little unfinished business to take care of last night. The Rogues took on the Albany Patroons, who eliminated them from the playoffs last season. On Wednesday evening, the home team came out on top, 118-111. It was a huge night for Armani Chaney, who dropped 44 points. His high score last night was historic, as it marks the first time in Basketball Super League history that a player has scored 500 career points. The two teams meet again on Friday.
For high school basketball players in this province, there's no bigger weekend than this one, the provincial championships. This week, it's the girls' turn. There are 4 levels of competition happening all over the province. Here at Holy Heart, it's the highest level. And today, the tournament got off to a good start. Now, if this is something that you didn't know about, let me tell you.
This weekend is a huge weekend. We have 4 basketball championships happening across our province in the girls' side. We have 1A in St. Lawrence, Newfoundland and Labrador, 2As in Fogo Island, 3As in Gander, and here in St. John's at Holy Heart, we have the 4A championships.
It means a lot to me. I've seen it throughout all the years of me playing, and my brother played in it, and it was just awesome to watch, and it's great to play in it and win our first game here by 1.
Really excited for this tournament, but it is pretty sad to be done. But we're going to give it our all for this tournament and try to go out with a bang.
Kind of used to it at this point because nobody really wants to travel to play us, so we're used to it. Mixed emotions, like nervous, excited. I'm just like here to make the most of it for my last 4 years.
Student athletes, they want to be at the provincials. It's for grade 12 students, it's their last trip, their last hurrah with their girlfriends and their coaches, and then they get to see the province, so it's a huge deal for them, and you often see in our qualifiers them fighting tooth and nail just to get to these championships.
There's a lot of emotions. It's really bittersweet, but I'm excited.
I'm gonna be really sad. Like, I've been playing with them for a little bit, so. Yeah, she's probably gonna cry.
Across basketball, there's 8 championships if you include the boys. We have incredible conveners and committees organizing these events. We provide them with some of the supplies and some ideas, and they run with it. So what you're seeing this weekend is community support at its best.
Oh, it would mean everything to us. We've been training for it all year, and like we would love to come home with a 4A banner.
It feels great. It feels great to be a part of this atmosphere, to help coach the young kids. It's such a great experience and some of my best memories. I love to contribute and be a part of it.
I'll miss our chats and our conversations and everything that we've done together, and I wish you all the best. We did have a few laughs too.
We did. Do you remember when we froze an egg? See how quickly we could freeze an egg?
Yeah. That was fun.
That was fun.
I remember that. Well, it's hard to believe that's Anthony Germain hosting On the Go for one last time today. This was his last weather hit with Ashley. Still to come tonight, we're sitting down with the soon-to-be retiree to talk about his incredible 32 years in the biz.
Yeah, I'll miss him asking me questions about when is it time to shovel. Well, you're not going to have to shovel anytime soon, at least for parts of the province. We do have some snow on the way for some of us, so we'll talk about that when I come back.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. The bonus prize deadline is midnight, Friday, April 12th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, Ashley, it seems like things are really quiet weather-wise right now.
It is, yeah. We're in a little bit of a pattern that is bringing us some onshore flow, which means there's still some of us that are seeing some flurries and generally gray cloud cover, but nothing super significant weather-wise. So I'm sure most of us are enjoying this break. A lot of the snow also melting fairly quickly out there from all that snow we saw over the last couple of weeks. But 0 degrees is where we topped out in St. John's today. Bonavista +2. The coldest temperature was in Lassie at -1, at least across the island anyway. But if you are away from that onshore flow, certainly seeing those warmer temperatures anywhere from about 3 to 6 degrees today. And then up across Labrador, Churchill Falls reached 5 degrees this afternoon. A different story, though, as you head towards the coast with temperatures a little cooler than that, about -5 in Nain. Your temperatures dropped down to -7 at the moment. Still a pretty nice evening out there for most people with temperatures near or just below 0 for the east, a little bit warmer than that for the west, and Happy Valley Goose Bay hovering around +2 at the moment. So if we take a look at the satellite radar, there's nothing big on the radar, but we are seeing a few flurries. If I stop the radar picture there, you can see some flurries on the west coast, definitely seeing some drizzle through parts of central, not showing up on the radar. And then same thing across the Avalon at the moment as well. So this is generally going to continue. This weak area of high pressure is really not bringing too much in the way of weather, but we are going to see some light snow continue for Lab West and head towards central Labrador as we head through tonight and then eventually into tomorrow morning. And we're looking at the potential for some flurries as well across the western portion of the island tonight. Otherwise, that onshore flow will continue, and you're still looking at that chance of flurries. Our temperatures tonight are going to dip around -3 to -8 overnight. Low-lying areas seeing the coldest temperatures. Winds again still out of the northwest, 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, much less though as you head towards Labrador. Really not a whole lot of wind to talk about at all, but your temperatures are going to be pretty similar in about -4 to -7 through the overnight for Labrador. So as we head into tomorrow, we're going to see that snow head towards central and coastal areas of Labrador through the afternoon. And by the time we get into tomorrow evening is when we should start to see some of that snow towards the coast. Across the island, though, generally the chance of some flurries tomorrow. We may still see some periods of sun at times, very briefly, but we may see that across the Avalon for the first half of the day, and then better chances some flurries, especially for the southern portion of the island as we head into the overnight and into tomorrow into Saturday morning, rather. So this is when we will see that chance of some flurries towards coastal areas of Labrador as we head through the overnight period. And as far as snowfall amounts go, likely 2 to 5 centimeters up across Labrador. There are some portions that may see a bit higher than that, but I don't think it's going to fall where anybody is. And really, that's not much. As you head towards the coast, though, you are looking at your temperatures or your snowfall amounts between trace and 2 centimeters. Temperatures tomorrow hovering near or just a few degrees above 0, about 3 degrees in Marystown. Again, we'll likely see some sunshine at times, but the best chance of flurries will be through areas of central, maybe even a few showers, but they won't be till later on in the day. So you should see some peaks of sun as well. 2 to 3 degrees, a little cooler for Harbour Breton, around 0. And as you head towards the west coast, your temperatures will be hovering around 3 or maybe 4 degrees. But again, relatively light winds, but that chance of shower flurries will continue through the day. Northern Peninsula, you'll be hovering from about 0 to +1. Again, some flurries certainly possible. Same thing for southeastern portions of Labrador. Temperatures still relatively mild, about +2 for Happy Valley Goose Bay. But again, that colder air in the upper atmosphere means you will see some snow through the day. And Nain, you'll hover around -4. Long range forecast, not too bad either. We'll get into that when I come back.
And Newfoundland's been kind of an adoptive home. I've been coming here for 30 years or whatever it was, and I figured, hey, listen, a job's come up here. What do you think? And we said, you know what? If we're going to go back to Canada, then this is the place we want to be. And that was pretty much it.
Love of his wife brought Anthony Germain to Newfoundland a dozen years ago, and a love of this place kept him here. Today, Anthony hung up his headphones as a CBC radio host. In a special feature interview, we're looking back at his impressive 32-year career and asking, what's next? Well, this is a big emotional day here at CBC. This is the last day here in the CBC radio studio for our friend and colleague, Anthony Germain. Now, local CBC listeners and viewers know him well. He's had a distinguished career spanning 32 years and several continents. Most recently, you've heard Anthony hosting CBC Radio's On the Go. He's also spent time with Here and Now with the team as a host. And before that, he was behind the mic on the St. John's Morning Show. But Anthony made his mark as a skilled journalist, writer, storyteller, and interviewer long before ever arriving at CBC Newfoundland and Labrador. So let's talk about it. So Anthony, Big day, as I said.
Yeah.
Major milestone. How are you feeling about it all?
Feeling kind of weird being interviewed by you,
I
to be
know.
honest, because usually you and I are talking about how we're going to interview this person. So to have you asking questions, it all feels a little surreal, but also real at the same time now. I made the decision a few months ago. And so here we are, my farewell interview with Carolyn Stokes.
Oh my goodness.
It's hard to believe.
It really is hard to believe.
Yeah.
And so you made the decision a few months ago. Why are you deciding to go now?
Well, I've kind of prided myself on always calling it like it is. So, I'll just tell you bluntly, when the CBC announced that we were going to be looking at some serious cutbacks in 2024, so this was towards the end of last year, I thought about it, and I've been through rounds of cuts in this corporation before, and it can be very unpleasant, as with all organizations, as our colleagues at the Telegram may well be facing, as the entire media industry is facing. And I just said, you know what, I was planning on leaving 2 years from now, but if we're going to be facing that kind of change and disruption, then maybe now the time is right.
It is challenging times for journalism right now, and you do have a particular skill set, core competency that I think is very valuable in this day and age of journalism where there's so much misinformation out there, challenging times. The fact that you're leaving, it feels like a bit of a loss to journalism as a whole.
That's very kind of you to say. I like to think that I've had some role teaching and mentoring other younger journalists who are coming up. And in some ways, you're younger than I am, but you're not as young as some of our youngest journalists. And you think about the workload that a lot of them have now with, okay, I'm going to file for television or video, I'm going to file for radio, I'm going to file for cbc.ca/NL. So I'm filing for 3. So when I started, there was radio and there was TV. Then there was radio and TV. Now there's radio, TV, and the web. And so the demands on journalists are really serious these days.
Spread pretty thinly.
Very much so. And that's one of my big concerns, is that I think it's almost like Ironman competitions, the swimming, the running, and the cycling. Very few people are good at all 3. But it's hard to always be good at all 3. So I'm concerned, as I'm leaving the profession, about the depth, because some stories really do require depth. And in an era of cutbacks and reductions, and with uncertainty at the very top of news organizations as to where we're all going, that's my concern leaving, is, where's the depth going to be? Where's the really meaningful, profound journalism going to happen? I'm sure we'll still find ways to do it, but it's getting tougher and tougher to do that kind of work.
You have done so much over your 32-year career. You worked in so many places. You started in Halifax, and you worked in Atlantic Canada, moved over to Ottawa, worked with the House, so you were in that political realm on the Hill.
Yeah.
What was it like covering politics in Ottawa at that time?
It was a great time because it was during the Chrétien, Martin, Harper years, was my time on the Hill. And Jacques Chrétien was just a very fun prime minister to cover, right? Because he had that bluster, a proof is a proof is a proof that is proven, and he was just a very colorful guy. And then there was the Lennon-McCartney thing about the Liberal Party then. If you didn't like Chrétien, you liked Paul Martin. If you didn't like Paul Martin, you liked Jean Chrétien. They had a winning formula, and they completely destroyed it. And they allowed Stephen Harper to get in. A lot of people think that the Liberals could have stuck things out had they figured that out. Harper was his own kind of cool customer. I have a lot of respect for his intellect, a man who knew what he wanted. Much more accessible when he was leader of opposition than when he would become prime minister to people in our line of work. But I love my time in Ottawa. I learned a lot about how the country runs. And then China came up. So I got to go to China, which was 5 years of a joyous roller coaster. And I can tell you, of all the positions, none of them are the favorite, because you meet good people no matter where, whether it's St. John's or Shanghai. But I can't remember a single day being bored for 5 years in Shanghai and Beijing. So it was really quite the trip of a lifetime, and obviously had a big influence on my kids and my wife Doris as well. Right, living in China was an adventure.
And you've seen just some staggering stuff, being in war zones, and I'm sure that kind of humanity is really in the forefront when you're covering that kind of thing. Can you tell us a little bit about your time and maybe some of the experiences you've had covering war zones that have just stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, so most of my war zone experience was in collapsing Yugoslavia, so in the Balkans, so the turn of the millennium, really 1999, 2000, 2001, with Yugoslavia collapsing, and then later in Libya, and also to a rebellion in Thailand. And I think the thing about war zones is that when you see humanity at its worst, because that's really what war is, right? It's a collapse of civilization. You also get glimpses of humanity at its best. So there are heroes, and there are people trying to stop the bloodshed, but it's going to sound corny, but it really makes you grateful for where you're from.
You went from all those places to here in Newfoundland and Labrador, a little corner of the world.
Yeah.
What brought you here, and what has that experience been like for you?
In a word, Carla, de wife.
Love.
Love. Well, you know, we're in a strange business, you know, because if you work as a national or as an international correspondent and you have a family, you know, they follow you around everywhere. And it's thanks to my wife and kids that I've been allowed to have the career that I had. I don't think I appreciate how stressful it was for my kids. Or my wife. Oh, wow, Dad's over there. You don't think about these kinds of things. So I'd kind of had it with, you know, that. And I'd still, even now I'm too old, I can't run as fast, so I can't go back to war zones, I don't think. But it was really time to sort of make a decision. The kids were kind of becoming more American than Canadian. And Newfoundland's been kind of an adoptive home. I've been coming here for 30 years or whatever it was. And I figured, hey, listen, a job's come up here. What do you think? And we said, you know what? If we're going to go back to Canada, then this is the place we want to be.
The big question on so many people's minds is, what are you going to do next? So I won't ask you that, but that's coming up. We'll have more with Anthony Germain coming up after the break. Welcome back to Here and Now. I'm here in the radio studio with our friend and colleague Anthony Germain, who is exiting stage right after 32 years working at the CBC. Anthony, in preparing for this, I was going through our archives.
Uh-oh.
Wow, there is so much in there, so many stories that you've covered over the years in, you've done so much for radio, but also your time in television, working with Here and Now. Can you talk about some of the stories that really stand out for you? I know there are a bunch that stand out for me. Yeah. The salmon die-off, the rooms, lost St. Lawrence, just to kind of touch, but what things jump out for you?
I think you've identified three that I would definitely mention, and I think the first one I'd talk about was St. Lawrence. I think people ask me, did you like radio or TV more? I said, it's hard to pick because some stories are better on radio and some stories are better on TV. And I think being part of a TV crew that goes into a community when it's really suffering, as was the case in St. Lawrence, a loss of life story where a fishing community, a small town, has lost 4 fishermen. To be going live from that community, from the wharf, and talking to people, very, very powerful stories at a very difficult time. So for loss of life stories, television can be very powerful. And another thing is that seeing is believing. And you mentioned the salmon die-off. So a few years ago, more than 2 million fish. Clearly, the aquaculture industry, which is an important industry, to hold a company accountable that did not want to be as forthcoming with the extent of what was going down there, it was just a long trip, getting the approval to get on a long liner to actually see what the cleanup entailed and how big it was. I honestly think if we had not been there, I'm not convinced that we would know the extent of what actually happened. Doing the special with Heather Hiscox for the 100th anniversary of Beaumont Hamel outside the rooms with the royal visits and all that, that was fantastic. And I think in some ways when you have time to really produce good TV, when you can work in archives, and Lee Pitts, who's a producer, you can do some beautiful things. And that was nominated for a Screen Award. So there's so much. I don't know where I pick. Even like the Feed and L shows with you and Ashley at the mall.
So much fun.
So much fun. Meeting the audience, and working with you and Ashley, as with Debbie and Ryan. My time on television and Here and Now was wonderful. And deciding to leave Here and Now to come into this radio studio to do On the Go was very difficult because I really enjoyed working with you a lot. You personally,
Oh, thank you. Well, I loved working.
We got a Kleenex now.
Had a lot of good times, a lot of laughs, for sure.
You mentioned archives. Did you look at the bloopers? Don't. Don't.
No.
Do not.
We've had some moments.
Let me leave with dignity.
What has been the difference, do you find, between working in television and working in radio?
That's a big one.
Because they both have their challenges. They're different.
Yeah.
Clearly, radio is your first love. Is that fair to say?
I'd say so. I think what I found challenging in TV, and you know this, is that if there's a technical problem, I think the official language for that is a screw up. On radio, you can laugh it off in a way and move on. In television, it's a nightmare. When something goes wrong in TV, you can't just sort of look at the camera because you end up doing this.
Deer in headlights.
And no one sees the deer behind this microphone. They all see it in that, right?
I've been
so
there.
I found that we all have, right? And I found that really tricky. And I think the other big difference is that on a radio show, there's much more movement. Like you can pursue things, as you well know. Like on TV, you could be doing a live interview. The guest says something you weren't expecting. You go, oh my. I want to follow that up. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But if I do that, I'm going to throw the whole show off the rails, right? So I found television a little more rigid that way than radio is, which I didn't particularly like. On the other hand, there's no question when a story is purely visual, you think of like a volcano erupting. I mean, radio can't compete with that, right? Certain accidents, weather, storms. I mean, look at Fiona. There are certain stories where TV wins hands down. Right.
Even your most recent story about the Health Sciences Center.
Well, yeah, you and I went over
and the
there.
Freezers outside next to the dumpsters. It was a kind of a shocking image to see.
Yeah, well, and the television, right? You and I standing by these freezers, by the dumpsters, and you know, television kind of just shows you what it is. It took me a long time to sort of really understand that different dynamic in TV, and the other reality is that in radio you have to do all the work yourself, but in television, the shooters make us look so good. They do. Like they do a lot. I can say this because I'm leaving now, but all that great stuff that you saw in Here and Now while I was there, I had nothing to do with that. It was all the shooters.
Yep.
And they
Thank
really
goodness
do.
for shooters or no lighting. Well,
there you go. Right.
Yeah.
So the technical side, you know, the 10-ton pencil of TV, I found that a bit intimidating, and sometimes it's such a team effort. There's so many people to make good television. It takes, you know, it's a teamwork. Whereas in radio, it can be a little more like a commando soldier. So it's got different strengths and weaknesses. I love them both, though, right?
Yeah. I know a lot of people are asking, you've been getting this question right, left, and center.
Right. The one I'm not going to answer.
Yeah. What are you going to do next?
I honestly, and I mean this sincerely, I haven't made up my mind. Without going into details, I've been blown away by the strange phone calls after I announced. So I have, you know, I'm really going to take some time and think about it. Teaching is, I think, you know, where my head is at, but teaching where and what, who knows? But there are communications jobs, there are all kinds of jobs out there that I hadn't really thought about. So I haven't made up my mind yet. So to completely dodge your question, you don't have to badger me and go after me now since I told you to do that when someone's being evasive. But I really haven't made up my mind. I honestly haven't made up my mind yet.
Have you thought about writing a book?
I have thought about that. Yep. And I may do that. But I don't know if I want to write a memoir kind of thing or fiction, to be honest. So who knows? Yeah.
Well, someday over coffee, I'd like to hear about those phone calls that you've received since you announced your retirement.
As soon as this is over, I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything.
Anthony, you are going to be so missed.
Thank you, Carol.
By the viewers, by the listeners. I've really appreciated every minute that I've had working with you.
Me too.
And I'm very grateful for you as a journalist and a friend.
Well, you're very kind, and I'm going to miss you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the long-range forecast. And we were saying earlier how quiet things have been. What about looking long-term?
Still fairly quiet through the weekend, but we are looking at that snow continuing up for portions of Labrador. It's nothing significant, but it'll at least, add to what's on the ground, what little there is. Let's take a look at what's going on for your Friday evening into your Saturday. So we do have a little bit of that disturbance, which will bring that snow to parts of Labrador through Saturday morning. We may see a few flurries for the eastern half of the island as well, but other than that, Saturday actually looking pretty nice by the time we get into the afternoon hours, especially across the Avalon. We may even see some sun in the mix. But again, on the south coast, you'll likely see some flurries, and we're still in that northerly flow, so clouds will be the story through the day on Saturday. Labrador, you're still going to see those flurries. They'll move their way towards the coast as we head into the evening hours. But again, nothing too significant as far as snowfall amounts go, probably 2 to 5 centimeters max. Now, your daytime highs are really not moving much anywhere across the province. We're going to sit anywhere from about +2 to -2 across Labrador, and the island should sit somewhere between 1 and about 4 degrees through the day. If you do see some sunshine, you may see temperatures a bit warmer than that, but flurries or showers certainly still possible. Now, as we head into your Sunday, things should clear out. This looks like the best day of the weekend for most. It will be still flurry activity up across Labrador, but a little less of that northerly flow in play. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to see any flurries, because that's certainly possible, but a better chance of seeing a few peaks of sun. Now, not the case along the south coast. That southerly flow will likely keep you in some fog through the day on Sunday. Now, as far as temperatures are concerned, again, because we've got that switch in flow, cooler temperatures to the south, otherwise 2 to 4 degrees across the island. Labrador, you're generally sitting somewhere between 0 and about +3, and a little cooler for the northern portions again. Now, the northern peninsula, you're still looking at that chance of a few flurries, but also some sunshine in the mix as well. But again, overall, nothing really in the long range either. Now, Monday, we may see some flurries, keeping an eye on that one. But overall, temperatures will be hovering between about 0. The Monday will be the coolest, but 2 to 3 degrees in our overnight lows. Again, not moving much. Our temperatures will be -2 or -3. Now, for central Newfoundland, you're looking at your temperatures above 0 right through next week. Monday, Tuesday, looking a bit unsettled. Like I said, for western Newfoundland, that will be the story for you as well. More in the way of potential for showers Saturday and Sunday, but Monday and Tuesday look a little cooler with that chance of some flurries. And then for Labrador, still hanging on to those mild temperatures. 1 to 3 degrees is your daytime highs, but again, with the chance of some flurries, and gray skies the story for western Labrador, and down to about -2 by the time you get into Tuesday. Speaking of Labrador,
nice.
This is a lovely shot. It was a cold, clear night on Separation Lake there. Great shot, I thought. Just enjoying the tent. And yeah, what a great shot. Thank you so much for that. If you have any weather photos you'd like to share with us, you can send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, I imagine the kettle having a really good boil. Maybe having some tea or some hot chocolate.
Yes, very lovely.
Very, very nice. Thank you so much for that, Ewan. Very nice. Well, I still can't believe that Anthony's last show was today.
I know.
We didn't really talk about it much in the interview, at least the part that got to air, but he has really mentored so many people in this building. If you heard his last show this afternoon, that really came across. There's so many young journalists who have benefited from his skills. So.
And he was just such a great sounding board, right? Like, he can just bounce something off of him, and he had always had such sound advice, so we're certainly going to miss that.
Oh, big time. He's going to be in here tomorrow for some cake, so we'll get to say another goodbye then. But that's it for us. We're going to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.